Well, thank you, Pepper. That's certainly a first for me to be introduced by a higher form of intelligence, shall I call you? Now, if this lower form can get all this technology to work, we'll be fine. I just want to start by thanking you for inviting me to be here to represent APPA. It's quite an honor to travel halfway around the world and to represent our professional association, which is the United States version of HEFMA. And it's been a great experience serving in the roles of President-elect, President, and now immediate past President for APPA, and to be engaged with international partners around the world and to learn much from them, including my attendance at the Odd Summer program, which I will attest was a great experience. You did very well in capturing your learning experience. The collaboration is phenomenal, how quickly the attendees come together and start working as a team in a peer-to-peer learning environment. So kudos to HEFMA for sending delegates to that and put out the challenge for APPA to send some of our members to the next ODD program. I'm going to speak today about leading your organization into the age of accelerating technology. It's a derivative of what I've did at ODD and have done at other conferences. But I'd like to start with this quote. Jack Welch is a former CEO of General Electric. And a couple years ago, actually around 2000, he stated, if the rate of change on the outside of your organization exceeds the rate of change inside, the end is near, meaning that your business is doomed. For us, and from what guided my career, is to pay attention to what goes on outside our organizations, because if it's twirling faster than we're keeping up with, it'll overtake us. So Jack Welch was talking about change in a different era, and fundamentally the fourth industrial revolution is about the exponential change that's happening, the accelerated change, the explosion of change. The third industrial revolution is about the technology. The fourth is about the speed of what's happening. So Welch could not even imagine this world changing as fast as it is now. So we're going to look at this video and get a flavor for this. Do I have sound? Okay, hold on, please. Let me try this again. Any advice on the sound? Okay, hold on, let's see if my sound's turned up. Thank you. There's a lot packed into that. It's 2.5 minutes, and as you can see, this was developed by Skills Development Scotland. So this is an international phenomenon that we're experiencing. And again, the big takeaway for me is the rate of change, the acceleration that's going on, the exponential change that we're experiencing, which again is at the heart of the fourth industrial revolution. So it's believed that this turning point was in 2007 with the introduction of the iPhone, which is really the launch of what we're dealing with today in terms of technology and technology acceleration. And many of these applications were actually started within an 18-month period centered around 2007. And Facebook was becoming global at the time. Uber wasn't quite up and running yet, but the rest of these technologies were being introduced and feeding on these technologies of infrastructure that were behind us. So some of these on the left-hand side are familiar to us as technologies that altered our daily lives. But on the right-hand side is the sort of the engine behind all this change. And I'm not going to go through these, but these are lesser-known names and lesser thought about technologies that are working in real time together to accelerate the world that we're now experiencing. So in their books, Brynjolfsson and McAfee, they wrote about the second machine age. It's a sort of a derivative of the fourth industrial revolution. But they liken this exponential change, well, they exemplify this exponential change with this notion of the chessboard. And I'm going to cue up another video with the co-author McAfee and let this speak for itself.
Very helpful, and it's a story about the inventor of the game of chess. The legend goes that the inventor took his creation to the Emperor of India and showed him the game. And the Emperor was so impressed by the beauty and elegance of the game of chess that he said, "You can name your own reward. Majesty, I'm a humble man. All I want is a pile of rice. Put 1 grain of rice on the first square of this chessboard. Double that, put 2 grains of rice on the second square. Double that, continue on and on. And when we've got 64 squares full of rice, just give me that quantity of rice." And the emperor says, "You really are, humble man. Make it so." Now, those of us who have had a little bit of math realize how much trouble the emperor is in. But that constant doubling adds up over time, and it reaches numbers that absolutely stagger the imagination. After 32 squares, there are a few billion grains of rice, which is a lot, but that's about as much as you would get from harvesting one large field. It's only when you get to the second half of the chessboard that things get really, really strange. So by the time they've covered 64 squares of the chessboard, there's a pile of rice bigger than Mount Everest, and it's more rice than has been produced by all of humanity in the entire history of the world. When the emperor realizes how badly he's been tricked by the inventor, he has to go ahead and cuts off his head. So we did some quick calculations. The United States started tracking information technology as a category of corporate investment in about 1958. And if you take the normal doubling period of Moore's Law as 18 months, you take 32 of those doubling periods and you add that to 1958, it turns out that we entered the second half of the chessboard when it comes to digital technology in about 2006. So since 2006, we've seen the explosion of social media. We've seen the arrival of smartphones and tablets. We've seen computers that can now drive cars. We've seen humanoid robots in factories. We have seen a computer be the world champion in the quiz show Jeopardy. All these things have happened since 2006. So to me, that means that we are in some new phase. Maybe we have just started the second half of the chessboard when it comes to the power and the impact of digital technology. And if what I just said is true, if there's any truth to it, there's one conclusion. And that conclusion is we haven't seen anything yet. And I firmly believe that the digital innovations that are going to come and that are going to affect the business world are going to be absolutely transformative in the not too distant future. If that's the case, the only smart strategy at the top of the enterprise is again to embrace and to start leading the digital transformation for your company.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling to think about that we're entering the second half of the chessboard. And two key things that McAfee talked about there is that we haven't seen anything yet. Think about that. And it's time for us to brace this change and lead our organizations into this. So let's talk about what the second half of the chessboard could look like in the not too distant future, and then we'll talk about how it applies to our profession. So let's realize it's big data driven. He mentioned Moore's law, which is the doubling of computer speed every 18 months. And it's been on that trajectory for 50 years. Moore was the CEO of Intel. He predicted that we'd have doubling of the integrated circuit back in its day in the 70s, and that would last for 10 years. He was partially right. It's lasted for 50 years. So big data is this volume, velocity, and variety. So the velocity is Moore's law, the speed of computing power. The volume, as you saw in the video, is our ability to collect and store data and to manage it. And that volume is doubling, again, every 2 years. You saw in the video 90% of the data that we have today is just in the last couple of years. And again, that's a trajectory that we see not ending as we find ways to collect and store vast volumes of data. The third part is variety, and that gets us to the Internet of Things. So this second half is big data driven, but IoT enabled, meaning that we have sensors on just about everything. And in our built environment, we are rich with sensing capabilities. A lot of it's in our building control systems already, but it's also in door card access, it's in fire alarm systems and other things. We have a lot of data out there. We're data rich, but information poor is the way to look at it. But the good news is that many of us have a lot of infrastructure out there that we can leverage and get information from it. So the sensing capabilities, a number of things that are being monitored is also growing exponentially on us. And again, it's the things of the Internet of Things, and our profession is about things, correct? We deal in the physical world, so this is our domain. The next thing is that it'll be OT engineered, this second half. OT is operations technology. It was a new term for me just a short 18 months ago. Never thought about it, but the more and more I see, the more and more I'm seeing it in the literature. OT is operations technology. It's us taking the technology that's available and finding a way to use it in our built environment. Our IT departments aren't experienced in what it takes to operate a building mechanical system. They don't know how to apply the emerging technology to optimize a building mechanical system. That's our knowledge base. They need to be our partner in managing the upkeep of the information technology systems, the security of the systems, and other things. But when it comes to applying it, it is us that has to be at the table to figure out, to find the opportunities and to leverage the opportunities. So think about operations technology as a growing field within your facilities organization, because it's going to happen. It has to reside here, but it has to be partners with your campus information technology organization. The next thing, it'll be AI elevated. Artificial intelligence will elevate this second half of the chessboard and take us in areas that we never dreamed we could go. And I'm going to show a video, another video clip, which is produced by IBM, which I think helps us understand how they're creating the artificial intelligence for building operations. So let's take a look at this.
Surrounded by the Internet of Things, thousands of sensors every day from cars, factories, and stores. These sensors and the data they produce ensure safe driving, food safety, and efficient production. However, there's much more we can do with the large amounts of information that's generated. At IBM Research, we're developing AI technologies to connect and understand data in ways never seen before. We combine machine learning with knowledge graph reasoning to enhance the data with layers of semantic abstraction. This gives us new natural user interfaces that allow us to gain new insights from the data.
A lot of the data that's coming from us is IoT based, and that's Internet of Things based, so that's machine-to-machine data. When you get a lot of data thrown at you, it ends up being a very difficult task of trying to extract real insight from that data set. The only way we're going to solve this problem is to teach the machines to make sense of the data, so we can ask it questions and expect reasonable answers.
We developed a knowledge graph for IoT. The The system knows all about IoT and understands the meaning of different types of data. It works in a similar way to the way our brains think. Imagine a temperature sensor in the middle. An office worker tells the system, hey, it's too hot here. It analyzes the speech as text and extracts the concept hot and here. It understands that hot is a concept of heat. It quickly accesses the knowledge graph on all assets in the area. It then uses AI analytics and sensor data to determine if the temperature is actually too high. It realizes the office areas are paid no school window. It checks the illumination sensor, automatically aligns the weather, to see if there is high sunlight causing excessive temperature and finds nothing unusual. It tries a different branch in its knowledge graph. It finds an AC unit and uses AI diagnostics to find the heating valve switched on. So we can actually identify the problem and the machine will automatically to relevant people go fix that problem.
It's a scalable solution that enables IoT to learn behavior to understand operation and solve diagnose problems, while making human-machine interaction more natural and machine.
It's a general-purpose, artificially intelligent, multi-dimensional knowledge graph for IoT. It combines reasoning with machine learning to analyze and understand very large data sets in real time. This enables new insight in complex systems at scale.
So that's a view into our future world. The question is how quickly will we be getting there, because this technology is there in many cases. As if this isn't scary enough about all the changes happening, we're about to throw gasoline on this fire with 5G data transfer. 5G is projected on the low end to be 11 times faster than 4G, and on the high end, 100 times faster. And it'll make connectivity virtually seamless once 5G is up and running and fully matured in a few years. But just imagine everything that 4G enabled up till now, and now we're getting into sort of a hyper speed of data transfer. And then finally, it'll be blockchain secured. Blockchain is, again, another game-changing technology that's going to change the architecture of the internet. It's going to bring, the internet wasn't built for transactions, although we use the internet for transactions all the time. And we have scores and scores, if not hundreds of passwords we have to use with every account that we have out there. But blockchain will be built for transaction. And I'm not going to get into the details of blockchain because I can't explain it. But I'm trying to understand how it's going to change the world. And I do have learned that it is all about the internet architecture, and it's already being deployed in many areas and will be a game changer and lead to another explosion of innovation in the not too distant future. So the thing, I just mentioned, I can't explain the technology, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm up here talking about technology, but I don't understand it because I'm not an IT professional. And part of the message to our members at APA is that we have to get over the intimidation of the technology, and we have to see ourselves in the role of technology strategist or technology leader or application leader for our organizations. We have folks in our organizations, we have folks in our campuses that understand this technology, but we are the ones that have to lead its application. So, that brings me to this transition here, transition slide. The words that we hear over and over again, at least in the States, is we have to do more with less, more with less. And yet we have all this exploding technology over here that we don't seem to be thinking about as we are asked to squeeze more and more out of our budgets to take care of more and more property. So APA has taken the position of, let's stop doing more with less. That's not where we should be. What we need to be doing is doing different. And that's the shift. And it's up to us as organizational leaders to lead the different that our organization is going to do. So we're saying let's all do the Fosbury flop. And I'm going to cue this up. When you think about doing different, I want you to think of this Olympic example.
The 1968 Olympic Games proved to be a turning point in the history of the high jump event. Into the Mexico City Olympic Arena came not only a new name to the sport, but a new approach, which was to revolutionize the high jump event. Dick Fosbury from the United States demonstrated a new style of high jump, which some considered strange and awkward. It was a jump he had devised in previous years, and one which unsettled opponents. While the crowd first saw him as a novelty, his continued success at clearing the ever-increasing height soon made it apparent he was a serious contender. Valentin Gucker from the Soviet Union failed in his attempt of 2.22 meters, while Fosbury and his US teammate Edward Carruthers cleared their way to a jump-off. The bar set at 2.24. Carruthers failed, and Fosbury took his new style of high jump over the bar and into the history books. Fosbury had won his gold. Within a few years, the Fosbury flop had become the standard method of jumping in this great Olympic sport.
So the Fosbury flop is, I believe, a lesson for us. This is a graph of the high bar using the different techniques over the years. And you can notice that with each one, we sort of plateau. We only got to a certain stage and we're just incrementally improving until we do it different. And Fosbury did it different and literally raised the bar because of that technique. Fosbury was an engineering student. He took an engineering approach to the high jump. He was an average Olympian athlete, barely made the team. His technique was sort of unorthodox and scary to some. And he never went back because once he demonstrated the technique, there were far greater gifted athletes who could jump higher than him. But he did re-engineer how to do the high bar. And by his flop basically had part of his body over the bar already before the rest of it was coming up over. So again, it's I think a striking lesson in doing different. So let's look at an example of doing different that is on us right now. And in many ways, there's similar applications going on my campus. So we'll look at this 30-second video.
Hey, pass, please. 150 over there. Nothing wrong with the elevator. Right. But you want to fix it. Right. So who sent you? Your guy. What new guy? Watson.
My analysis of sensor and maintenance data indicates elevator 3 will now function in 2 days.
There you go. Still your pass.
So Watson is Pepper's colleague. Watson is the artificial intelligence developed by IBM that beat the masters at the Jeopardy game. Watson has the capability to learn the collective body knowledge in the English language, and maybe other languages for that matter, understand it in our language and not be programmed to understand it. So if you're competing against Watson, as an example, in Jeopardy, you're up against some stiff competition because Watson studied everything that's out there. The doing different here, as you notice, the maintenance mechanic showed up before the elevator was broken. And this is technology that's already with us now. And it's being employed on my campus as one of the earliest adopters in the United States of fault detection and diagnostics. So if you want to look a little bit more about today's emerging application that's gaining widespread growth in the States at least, and I think it's international actually. I know when I was in Australia it was there, and as well as in some parts of Odd when I visited. It's fault detection and diagnostics. What it's doing, it's recognizing that a piece of equipment is on a failure curve before the symptoms that you normally would realize present themselves. So we value institutional knowledge of our mechanics because they can smell something's funny, or they feel a vibration, or something's warm, and they're bringing institutional knowledge that, hey, this equipment's starting to go bad. What our sensing technology does is catch it at a much earlier weak signal type of occurrence, and can have us recognizing that a system's going out of norm before it fails. In fact, we're shifting our maintenance from reactive maintenance coming out when we get a cold call or a hot call in a building to predictive maintenance that we know we're going to get that call because the sensing data is telling us and the technology is telling us that if we don't do something about this, it'll lead to failure and we'll get a phone call. So this speaks to business continuity that Professor Swart was talking about, that we are avoiding those interruptions of our business from failures that we could have and we are going to catch predictively. And so one of the cost justifications for employing fault detection diagnostics is risk reduction due to business continuity. There's also energy efficiency, and then there's efficiencies in your maintenance staff. To show up under a planned call out with the right equipment, knowing exactly what the problem is to fix, is a lot less costly than getting a call that something's broken and now you have to go out there and diagnose it component by component. So in our application, we have 49 buildings that are using fault detection diagnostics. We've found $900 million in the first year of savings, principally from energy. Things that were simultaneously cooling and heating that we didn't realize, where we were sending, steam was leaking by in the summertime when we were in cooling mode. Things that we didn't even know were wrong because we weren't getting calls. Because both the steam and the chilled water were evening everything out and making it comfortable. So this is part of the difference that's going on. So we see this technology doing a number of things, and this starts with what I was just talking about, funding, getting away from the paradigm that we're funded for repairs and look at that where we're going to put the money into detection systems to avoid those costly repairs. We're going to go from troubleshooting components, coming out to that elevator example and looking at one thing at a time to figure out what's wrong, to having a systems view of it ahead of the call out, letting us know what's wrong. That'll take us from a reactive maintenance to a predictive maintenance model that I was just talking about. We're going to move from scheduling our PM work to a condition-based maintenance model. So the best way I can describe condition-based maintenance versus preventative maintenance, my old automobile, that's 10 or 15 years ago, I took it in for oil change every so many months, every so many miles, religiously. That's a PM program to replace that oil, because if I don't, then I could lead to further engine problems or performance degradation. My new car is telling me the condition of the oil is fine, and it's going to let me know when it needs replaced. And when I first started driving this car, and Sylvia will attest to that, I didn't trust this gauge. I almost felt like I had to knock it because I was driving much longer in terms of miles and months than I'm used to. But it was sensing the condition of the oil rather than a PM program just going in and changing it. And so you can imagine the cost savings that occur when you go to that type of system from a PM program. We waste a lot of resources on PM programs because they're developed as conservative estimates for an average piece of equipment, rather than encasing the car, monitoring my driving habits, my environment that I'm driving in, the length of my trips and all that. It's more tailored to the condition that I'm putting it through. Very key to saving a lot of the maintenance money. That'll take us also from going from a recommissioning to a continuous commissioning model. Every so many years we have to go and tune up our facilities, just like on the olden days you used to have to tune up a car. With continuous commissioning, with fault detection diagnostics, the equipment will stay optimal throughout its life. And if it's starting to degrade, it'll flag and we'll get it back on its optimal level. But we won't have to go into our buildings again and recommission them, because even if our mechanics go in and try to mess with it, change dampers and all that, the system will detect an upset condition and will send someone out to correct that. This technology will also take us away from valuing institutional knowledge to valuing shared knowledge. And again, it's in this collaborative world that we're getting into. The human aspect of working with this technology is the collaboration that we can bring with it, into it. And so we're going to increasingly value shared knowledge, as well as collaboration, going from rewarding expertise to rewarding collaboration, because Pepper's going to be the expert. We're going to be the collaborators. And then finally, from competing with the machine to complementing it, working with the machine. And that brings us to machine learning. And this is where over time, and you can see the knowledge map, that's an AI model, but just in the current state that we're in, as we go out and we recognize that there's a system upset, the current technology that we have is program technology that tells us, number one, look at this first, number two, look, it could be the problem, number three, the problem. It gives us a statistical view almost of, there's an 80% chance that your problem is a clogged filter, there's a 15% chance it's something else, 5, and so on. As we go through and we have a collection of work control information and what the problem was and what the solution was, we're going to build machine knowledge over time. And that's, again, back to the example of Watson in the elevator. Imagine a major elevator manufacturing having the ability to access all of its elevators around the world and have that collective understanding of, if this is the problem, we know this is the solution, because we have 200,000 points of data to point to, just not 20 elevators on a given campus. So again, we're looking into the future, and this is where it's going to take us. So where do we fit into all this? Is the answer to be more human? The video ended with this notion that with all this technology, what is the right role of us? And it's paradoxically, it's actually to work on our human skills, and not our technological skills, not to compete with Pepper or Watson, but to work on soft skills. And so this is what is envisioned. There's no question that soft skills are on the rise. The demand for them are on the rise. And it's what the machine can't learn. It's a fool's errand to try to compete with the machine and what they're learning. We have to bring what the machine can't bring to the table, and that's these soft skills that we see as creativity, feeling, integrity, learning, and curiosity is the one that I find most valuable. So a couple quotes here about looking at us as leaders. And again, we don't have to be the technologist. We have to be the leaders in this, and that requires us to have the soft skills necessary to lead our organizations. And Mara Swan from Manpower Group, an international employment company, says employability depends less on what you already know and more on how well you can learn, adapt, and apply that knowledge. Darwin, 150 years ago, said it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change. Are we responsive to the changes that are going on around us is the question for us. This article, speaking of that, came out just a couple months ago. Harvard Business Review talked about the AI-powered organization, and it says there in the subtitle, the main challenge isn't technology, it's culture. It's the adoption of the technology. It's the resistance to this technology that we face in our organizations. And it started in my own organization. When we went on our fault detection or our big data journey, I brought together a group of people that had to be open to change. They had to be the early adopters that you'll find in an organization. The 17% of any population that's willing to adopt new technology. And in fact, we had to change some folks on the team because they were too resistant to change. Once the 17 people in your organization can demonstrate success with an application or a change, the rest of the organization will come along. They want to wait and see that it's working before they dive in. But it's our role, again, as leaders to manage that cultural resistance to change and to be bringing a technology strategy to our organizations. Now, when I've talked to, I gave a very similar keynote to one of our regional meetings at APA, and APA, probably similar to you, says we're not ready for this change. We're not even digitized. We don't have the knowledge and all that. Well, a technology strategy could be to map out a long-term plan to convert from pneumatic control to digital control, to digitize your infrastructure to whatever pace and resources you have. It could be just to inform and educate your staff, to go to these sessions, to understand it, not from a technology standpoint, but from an OT and application standpoint. So there's many ways you can think about technology strategy all the way up to where I'm at, where we're pretty sophisticated along this way, and demonstrating fault detection diagnostics as an effective business case. In fact, there was no business case to be made for this when we went into it. We just saw that the future was taking us there, so let's learn about it. Now we have the ability to put numbers to the business case, and it's proving out to be a good investment. So that's that OT versus IT, and creates this technology in our world. So finally, I'll mention that APA is working with the tech industry in the United States to get introduced to one another. Next month will be Lambda Medlin, our executive director, myself, and a couple others will be at a technology conference where we're going to meet personal introductions to Silicon Valley companies that you're familiar with, Microsoft, Intel, Facebook, Apple, so on. the tech industry is unaware of our professional associations, at least in the United States. They weren't aware that an association like APA or HEFMA exists, an association that they can work with and help bring education and applications and pilots to. So we are very excited about what the future could hold for us, that we could get some assistance from the tech industry to help bring us along on this journey. The tech industry looks at campuses as the test bed for smart city technology application. So we're perfectly positioned to demonstrate on a scale that's manageable for these tech giants how we can bring technology to what in many cases is a small community, a small city. We're interested in the living learning lab that would create for our students. Imagine if we had this technology fit out and we had students that had this interest in learning data analytics and OT applications and IT applications, that they have this campus that demonstrates a smart city. In turn, those students graduate and go into the tech industry. So we think we have the model there that's a win-win-win all around that will help us move along with the pace of this accelerating technology that we have to move along with. So it's not too far-fetched to think about that we could be thinking of ourselves before the end of the next decade as Chief Operations Technology Officers. Instead of currently the term we use is Senior Facilities Officers in the States. That operations technology will be the big thing that we do, and facilities is where we apply it. Now, if that's a reach, at least if we don't get to that point, we're still define ourselves as facilities directors. Perhaps in our organizations, we'll have directors of operations technology. We certainly see it happening because of where OT is taking us. So it's pretty exciting, but you can see that our role is to become the leaders, not to sit on the sidelines and wait for things to happen. In fact, again, a technology strategy could just stay informed, to have a general understanding of some of the terms that I was covering today, and be positioned when your institution asks questions. Where are we at? Where are we going? We see technology emerging and exploding everywhere in the physical environment. What are we doing on our campus? So in closing, I'll just mention, again, as we think about leading the organization in the age of accelerating technology, if not us, then who is going to lead this on our campus? And if not now, when?
Excuse me, sorry.